yourself in and get ready. The leaders in NBL Supercoach are incoming, giving you the ultimate insight to help you dominate your mates and climb up the rankings. You're now listening to the Insight NBL Show with your hosts, Matrix and Hammer.
G'day, Cobbers. Welcome back to the Insight NBL Show. I'm Matrix. This is Hammer. Mate, let's get straight into, I suppose, a preview for round two. Let's help everybody basically fix your fuck-ups of round one and preview, because this is the first week that has double game weeks, isn't it, mate?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, fixing fuck-ups, and half of those were probably our fault with the Tyrell Harrison tip, so strap in, we've got plenty to fix. What's been happening?
Oh, mate, just a week at work. I'm super excited for double game weeks. I'm super excited for more than 5 games of basketball being on this weekend. As much as I enjoyed Hoop Fest, I just want more games.
Yeah, it's a bit simple when everyone's on the single. This is where it starts getting interesting, where you really need to start digging into the schedule, and a couple of pivot points coming up in some of the upcoming rounds. So we should get straight into it.
Yeah, look. On today's show, we're going to go through breaking news. We've got our game previews. We've got our most popular trades. We've got our community team, and answer your questions along the way. If you missed Monday night's show, get your scores in, guys. Get your questions in. We will star all the good ones and answer them along the way. As always, we're going to preface the show by letting everybody know that this week you should be focusing on Sydney Kings, Illawarra Hawks, Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, and Melbourne. And the special teams are Melbourne with the double-double this week, which is 2 doubles in a row.
100%. And the team you should 100% not be focusing on is the New Zealand Breakers. Single, bye.
Yeah, like if you have Parker Jackson Cartwright, as we know, Gav had, the leader of our Squeeze of the Week competition and our IFS comp, you should be saying bye to Parker Jackson Cartwright, because that is what the schedule says. Mate, how about we head into a little bit of breaking news?
It's time for some news from around the league.
Yeah, a little bit happening around the league this week. A lot of concerns coming out of the Jack Jumpers game last week with Magnay taking a couple of tumbles, a bit of a knock to the head. He's been cleared. The Jackies have said he will suit up. Not overly relevant. I wouldn't imagine too many people would be holding him on their bench at his over $300,000 price tag. News out of Adelaide. Adelaide are open to keeping Montrezl Harrell for the rest of the season. They do have a free import spot, but what it would mean is that they would have to release a local and also take one of their marquee guys off marquee status, which would have a few salary cap and other implications. So that would be your Isaac Humphries and DJ Vasiljevic, I'd imagine. And the last bit of breaking news, we have an NBL article off the website. Brian Gorgon has come out and said, Jalen Adams is my guy, giving us all kinds of confidence that, this guy is the head of the snake on that team.
Mate, we're going to have a little bit of a chat about our captain's choices. Sorry, I got stuck with some children that were not going to sleep, but captain's choices is still definitely something that we do on Wednesdays. This is our first real preview show, so sorry for a little bit rusty, but yeah, Jalen Adams might be my guy as well. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah. You need to shake that Tyrell Harrison rust out and step your game up, Matrix.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's keep things moving. I did enjoy the breaking news, but let's head into our game previews brought to us by Game Day Squad.
He's heating up.
Mate, Game Day Squad's a new sponsor that's popped on. Much like fantasy sports, instead of building a team, you build a squad. So you have players which you can sell for real money. I know last week I had a gold Matthew Dellavedova for 51 squad points. Now, because I had a gold one, I got 1 point. I believe it was 1.2 times his score for up there in the 60s. And I got to beat a lot of my mates. The top of our IFS game day squad is Aussie Bro Squad, who pipped me by 40 points. And I'm thinking about starting Jonah Antonio this week. Pulled a little silver Jonah Antonio. And I'm just thinking if I can have him running off my bench, I can run some higher end guys up there. Again, it doesn't really matter about game day squads doubles because you take the highest score out of those guys. So yeah, I've got a little bit of a different strategy when it comes to using my squad. But if anyone else wants to make a team, they can use code IFS50 when they're making an account. Get almost $20 worth of players and and join our competition. I believe it's in our link tree. Join our competition and play against us every single week. Mate, as we head into round 2, there was a lot we spoke about, but teams that probably took up a lot of our chat were Southeast Melbourne and Melbourne. Now, they are playing at 7:30, and both these teams are extremely relevant because they both play 2 games this week. What do you think of Southeast Melbourne versus Melbourne?
Yeah, look, the throwdown usually is a big game. I think the last one was pretty disappointing, but look, the crosstown rivals, we've got a lot of relevant players here. A lot of guys will have the hangover of Derek Walton Jr. and the big decision whether you keep him or you maybe pivot somewhere else. You've got all these Melbourne guys have been holding. Jack White was disappointing last game, but I'm confident he's going to bounce back. You got the news over Dellavedova, whether he's having a kid or not. Maybe he's in, maybe he's out. A lot of guys have Shea Ely. Phoenix imports last week were reasonably impressive. So there's a lot of guys that are probably going to feature through a lot of squads that we probably need to unpack.
Yeah, one, I suppose, marquee matchup that I'm excited to see is Jack White versus Matt Hurt because Matt Hurt, after last week, and of course he played very early on in the round, I was like, gee, I would love to get Matt Hurt into my team. I think Jack White is a play again this week. Melbourne play against Tassie later on, which I would consider another good matchup, even though he didn't take advantage against Tassie, same team, last week. But yeah, Matt Hurt is a guy that I was looking at, and probably, whether to hold Derek Walton Jr., because Derek Walton Jr. is a guy that I have intended to hold through this period. But I do think if you don't have any other fires, you could trade him to a primo, another primo, I suppose, this week. And I suppose ramping up to getting a Bryce Cotton or somebody like that the following week, or downgrade to a Kendrick Davis next week as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of options with that Derek Walton Jr. spot for those guys who are holding, or the guys who had Bryce Cotton week 1. I'm imagining most squads would have featured one of them. And to have a primo captain at that guard spot, if you've got a trade each week, you could quite easily go from either your Bryce Cotton or Derek Walton Jr. to a Jalen Adams, to a Bryce Cotton, to a Parker Jackson Cartwright in week 5 and have one of those studs on your court. So having that more expensive player, which allows you to sort of switch between those other expensive players, is not a bad play.
Because you can get somewhere with one trade every week. We're not worried about saving trades.
You don't have to downgrade someone else.
Yeah, I am super worried about having to go Darius Days to Angus Glover one week or something like that to fund these trades. Another one I do want to preface is Shea Ely.
Mm-hmm.
After this week and his price and his draw, I am considering Shea Ely almost must have. I'm not saying he must captain or anything like that, but especially with the chance that Delhi might miss one of these games this week. Shea Ely probably should have had early 40s in points last week. On a double, into a double, let's just say 4 games in 2 weeks. He is somebody that you could, while not somebody I'm looking to captain, definitely must own at 250K, in my opinion.
I think you're close to the mark there. He's startable, and that lower price of that 250, as we start to get some of these price rises, it's not inconceivable you can keep a guy like Illy on your bench. All right. As we look next week, if you were potentially going to downgrade to a Kendrick Davis for Adelaide, comes into 2 doubles, looking like a pretty good schedule for the next little while. Some of this extra cash is going to boost your bench, and a Shea Illy on your bench isn't that bad. I think he's going to go up in price. You're 100% right with the Delhi situation. And last week, we talked about on the last pod, the number of gimmies he missed, his score should have been better. And it was still 30 odd without being overly spectacular.
Yeah. I think we would have been having this very similar discussion. How are we going to get Delhi in our team and everything like that if there wasn't that cloud of him having another child? And we know that's why he's back in Australia. He was building a family. He played overseas. Look, it probably had a little bit to do with him struggling to get in an NBA spot. But he's happy to be in Australia, but will sit out NBL games if a kid's getting born this weekend. So
Could you imagine missing the birth of your kid because he had to play Tuesday night C grade? That would not go down at all. And I think he's in the exact same boat. Oh, you
Mate,
played,
my
didn't you?
kids know to be born on a Monday, and I was there the next day. I was, true story. Played on the Tuesday. Henry was born on the Monday, so it was out of visiting hours. So I've just wandered back in, gym bag over my shoulder, Hungry Jacks in one hand. I've walked in expecting to get all these questions like, "What are you doing?" I've walked through a dark hospital, walked all the way back, went and smashed my double Whopper meal back in the room with my 1 day old, and you know what? The boys appreciated me being there. The missus probably appreciated me not being there for a couple hours. It was win-win for everyone, I feel.
Yeah. Plus, I feel she would have had the schedule well in advance. It's not like you've sprung it on her.
Yeah, exactly. She's got she's got the login. I'm not telling her when the games are. She's checking it as much as
Hey, mate,
Braino used to when we worked around the NRL schedule around my C grade games.
exactly. Hey, mate, what do you think about the matchup? Derek Walton Jr. coming up against the 2 Melbourne guards. We know defensively that backcourt is tough.
That is why I'm a little bit off Derek Walton Jr. this week. When we saw, like, Milton Doyle, of course, took advantage, but he's a different beast. He's so much bigger, I suppose, than
And he didn't do
um,
anything in that first quarter. He looked like he was on struggle street. It all came late.
I think if we start to see Delhi not play, this changes a little bit. Like, Delhi is known as a defender.
Yeah.
I do think if he doesn't play, this changes a bit for Derek Walton Jr. But his matchup against the Breakers is definitely a lot more favourable than this first one against Melbourne.
Mind you, we called that a favourable matchup for the Bullets last week, and that turned out real well for us.
Keandre Cook, though.
True.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
Let's have a look at Illawarra versus Brisbane. The first one on Friday. Us over here on the East Coast are treated with a 7:30 game, which is the best time for kids' bedtime.
Yeah.
I could have a kid asleep and be able to watch both these games because we're treated with a 9:31 for Perth versus Sydney afterwards. But Illawarra versus Brisbane, the first in Illawarra's doubles. Look, Ulbrich, great. Very happy to hold him. In a pinch, you could even start him this week.
Mhm. I feel
Darius,
like there's better options this week, but he's definitely a hold. He's tipped to go up at least 30,000 with his break even's 1 or -1, something like that.
yeah.
He's a cash cow. He produced. He did get a lot of his points in garbage time last week, which inflated it. But we've been through that role and that rotation. The 3 bigs are locked into that 80-minute rotation between the 4 and 5 spot. And I've seen Tatum come out in the week saying that he's even going to try playing Froling at the 5, Aldridge at the 4, and a bit of Darius Days at the 3 to see what it looks like.
Which I think will be really good. I didn't see that much from Days that screamed a 3, though.
No.
Ulbrich and that's too big. Days, I think, could defend at the 3, which is completely fine, and it might get your best players out there, but I can't see this experiment, being fantastic.
I could see a few minutes here or there, matchup dependent, but, a few more minutes for our fantasy guys never hurts.
Yeah, absolutely. And Darius Days is one of those guys that I want to talk about. Definitely a play this week.
Yeah,
Definitely a start. And maybe if you don't even own him, could be a purchase as well. He's got a
yeah,
break even at 27.
over two
Definitely
games.
covered that by 15 points. Yeah, that's in 2 games.
Yeah,
So I think the matchup will be harder if Josh Bannon's back, which he was tipped to be back round 2, but I haven't heard any news yet this week. So keep an eye on our Twitter and we'll update it as we hear it.
yeah. Look, I don't even hate that matchup. I think Bannon will be tougher than some of the ones he's faced. Bannon's also rusty. He hasn't played in a couple of weeks. Uh, I think the Hawks are going to look good here. Brisbane are coming off the back of a pretty tough week. And to see which sort of Brisbane squad comes out this week will be another one. The Hawks are flying high.
So for those who had Tyrell Harrison, I know a lot of our viewers did. I know that there was people that captained him. Um, with his schedule, is he a trade out or a trade or a hold probably this week? I don't think you'd bring him in after he scored
No,
13.
you definitely wouldn't bring him in. I feel like he's a trade out. We were potentially talking pre last week of maybe exiting after that third game, banking on a pretty decent price rise. I don't think that price rise is going to be there like we expected. So I think you get off this sinking ship while you still can, and hopefully you can pick him up again in round 9 when Brisbane start coming to that sweet part of the schedule, potentially even at a discounted price due to his slow start. And while we're on the Brisbane bigs, I think Rocco's another one we jump off.
Yeah, it's a bit of a harder price to get across to, but I suppose with some of your jewels, like your Lockie, like
Yeah,
we're talking Lockie Aldrich, 54% owned, and we're saying everybody owns him. There's 40 odd percent of people. I'm not real good at maths. I would say 46% of people, if 54% owned, quick maths, then that don't have him. So, Rocco to Lockie Aldrich, if you don't have him,
yeah,
we haven't even started talking about it. Kelly LePepe, who looked really good last week despite not scoring that well. You could go some of those guys via Jules as well.
yeah. And I think this just highlights the importance of those dual position players. We put out a list on our Patreon for our subscribers of all the jewels in the game. Uh, the ability to slide Aldrich up to centre allows you to do that three-way sort of movement.
Okay, if it's in
Yeah,
a three
to
way.
um to get a guy like Rocco out. There's not too many straight centres you're going to get around that price. You really have to go and downgrade to a forward, whether it's a Henschel, someone like that, a Lat Mayan, that sort of stuff.
I just love that you went from a three way to straight centers, but we're going to
Mm,
go straight to Perth versus Sydney and leave that one there. We'll get a bit more of a chat about Illawarra, and maybe we chat about Illawarra's guards when they get to play Sydney, because against Brisbane probably a good matchup, but against Sydney probably a poor matchup, so they might
yeah,
cancel each other out. But Perth versus Sydney in what I would imagine to be the game of the round. I had the game of the round completely wrong last week. It was it was probably the Illawarra game that was the best game of the round last week. But Perth versus Sydney, these are two heavyweights.
this is big. These are an MVP, a former MVP going head to head, and that's Cotton and Adams. It's over at RAC Arena in Perth. So a flag here for Sydney is you're flying all the way over to Perth, coming all the way back again to play the Illawarra game. Perth up and about in front of the Red Army. Cotton had a huge game last week. We had a lot of really big scores out of Perth and a lot of really big scores out of Sydney. So I'm expecting more of the same.
Yeah, look, I am too, and I had a really good question from Global here. And what's your thoughts on keeping primos on the bench for singles and playing players like Ulbrich and Tui on doubles? Look, I really like that. I do think that those who have Bryce Cotton builds from last week, I do think Bryce Cotton at his price is too much money to be holding for a single. I think that he is, and you'd have to have some huge fires in your team to do it. But I think maybe Bryce Cotton is a trade out to a guy on the Sydney team like Jalen Adams. We should expect a price rise from him, or more comfortably, somebody like Derek Walton Jr. or maybe one of your Illawarra guards for the double this week, and then maybe even look at getting Bryce Cotton back the following week. I know it sounds like a lot of mucking around, especially if you've got that Supercoach brain, but we don't have, a cap on trades in this. You can do 2 a week. So what is your thoughts of doing something like that, Hammer?
Yeah, look, I'm all for bringing in a premium captain option. So if you need to flick between Cotton, Adams, PJC, like we talked about before, I think it's very viable. Where I sort of probably going to differ on this is last week everyone was on singles. You should have had your team set up enough that you don't have to, but there are going to be weeks where that schedule changes. A lot of teams you're holding have their run of doubles stop at the same time. So we're probably looking after this next round. It will be an example of that. And we need to think about who are the players that we can hold on a single. So, for example, this week, if you do the math, like Aldrich, let's say he averages 23. Let's be conservative. So that's 46 over 2 games. Is his 46 going to eclipse one of those primos on a single? Probably. All right.
Yeah.
Where you get stuck and you have to play a guy on a single, there's not that many that you really would be confident in. And they're these primos. Another guy this week, if you have to play on a single, Kendrick Davis, playing against the point guardless Taipans, he showed enough signs of life in the second half last week that I feel like he could do some damage and probably get around that 40, which is going to eclipse a guy on the doubles. But you got to be careful who you're playing on doubles. I wouldn't be playing like a Hickey or someone who's going to come out and maybe get 25.
I'd like to think that you had a little bit of forward thinking, that you hopefully have a Shea Ely and a Derek Walton Jr. or like some blokes like that you wouldn't have to play Kendrick on a single in this situation. So,
but there will be situations later in the season where that pops up, and that's probably the logic you need to apply to it.
Mate, I've got IJ in the chat asking whether Xavier Cooks is a trade as well. I don't think he is. He's got a 55 break even, which looks super high, but he just scored 38. He's going to cover his break even. You obviously had this guy because you had a little bit of faith in him. Playing against Perth, I think Doolittle and some of these other guys are quite a good matchup, but I think maybe playing against Days and the younger Lockie Aldrich, he could maybe take a little bit of advantage of. So not a bad week for Cooks. I'm not high on him because I don't own him, but I think if I was high on him in round 1, what I saw in round 1 wouldn't make him worth a trade out.
Yeah, and I think most teams right now at that power forward or your forward position, they've got really playable guys. You've got your Whites, your Days, Cam Olivers. They're the guys people are already owning. Are you getting that much more value by spending an extra $100,000 to go to Cooks? I don't think so. If you don't own him, I wouldn't be bringing him in if you own those other guys.
Mate, just a mental note to remind me to talk about Cam Oliver when we get into Sydney's second game. But you did have a little bit of a chat about Cairns versus Adelaide. Up north in Cairns, Adelaide looked great week 1. Cairns...
Once they figured it out, they looked like pus in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, and Cairns didn't look fantastic. They looked like they were struggling without a leader. They looked like they were struggling without a point guard. I think Adelaide will do a number on them this week.
100%. There's no matchup I like out of that goes in Cairns' favour. I think Adelaide will dominate them. And these are 2 teams that move into double-doubles the following week. So it's going to be a really good chance to get a look at them. And it's a really good chance to look at some guys who won't get a price rise for the following week. So you'd imagine a guy like Kendrick Davis. He's going to go off. First game drops out, same as your Lat Mayans. So this game plus the double next week will factor into your price rise. So very good one to keep an eye on. A lot of players in these games that'll be relevant probably the following week as trade-ins. And the ones I'm keeping my eye on are Davis, Lat Mayan, Montrezl Harrell, and then from Cairns, the ones I like aren't playing in Armstrong and Jackson McCoy, but probably Tanner Groves is the only one outside of that I've got half a lick of interest in.
Yeah, absolutely. Could be the most Supercoach relevant game to watch this week that you might not own more than one player from.
Exactly right.
I think Kendrick Davis, draw a line in the sand. If he scores 38 or over, I'll probably bring him in next week. But if not, I'll probably be trying to get Bryce Cotton in for a double game week as well. It just depends if I think he can do it. The eye test was good, but we're getting another complete look. If he can really dominate, and you know what, if he's on fire against these Cairns guys, it could be 50 something plus.
Yeah. Look, I'm probably considering that following week. We're getting ahead of ourselves here, but I would like to own Kendrick Davis through those two doubles. And I'm actually probably looking at boosting that week. And I'll put a little article out on the Patreon during the week explaining my reasons and what I'm going to look to do. But yeah, we haven't talked a lot about boosts on the pod. Maybe the review show next week we can bring up a little bit of that. But yeah, that Montrezl Harrell's another one that week I'll be looking to bring in as well.
Yeah, and it depends. Like if he looks as good as he did, if they sit hump a little bit more, if he gets more minutes, it's just like a new system. He'd been there for a week, and to me, looked like he dominated. I know we're talking 13 and 13, but just the eye test was fantastic.
Tell you who didn't dominate though was Isaac Humphries. Is there a world where Trez and Hump can play together? And the
No,
only answer is no.
yeah, absolutely. Look, that takes us through half the games. Let's have a look at our Patreon.
Want to take your Supercoach game to the next level? Inside Fantasy Sports are bringing you exclusive content all year round, such as weekly expert Q&As, team, trade, and captaincy advice, statistical deep dives, priority podcast questions, and tons more. So what are you waiting for? Get full access to the experts. Go to patreon.com/Insight Fantasy Sports and subscribe to Insight Unlimited today.
Mate, Tasmania versus Melbourne. Tasmania on a single. Milton Doyle looked really good. Magnay is playing. With their schedule, I have very limited interest in Tasmania, except for maybe seeing who from Melbourne might go really well against them.
Yeah. Look, Tassie's schedule, it just never really gets good. I think they've only got one back-to-back double all season from memory. You'd be bringing him in and out, and a guy like Milton Doyle at 350K or thereabouts, I don't think you can hold. You know, he's the only one outside of Magnay that gives me any joy in life. And Magnay,
Deep.
yeah, pretty much. Look, Magnay was good, but the 5 turnovers killed him last week. So Doyle and Magnay are about the only two I've got any interest in. Any of our cash cow potential ones we looked at preseason have all turned to shit. All right. Melbourne, you're right. That's what I'm looking at. Melbourne did struggle a bit against Tassie.
Yeah, they did. But one guy that didn't struggle against them was Rob Lowe. And in turn, probably Marcus Lee, the centers in general. But Rob Lowe played about 19 minutes, got 25 Supercoach points. While not looking fantastic, and Tassie sort of targeted him a little bit, his game, like, because he's so strong offensively, stretches the floor a little bit. Is Supercoach friendly, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. And we looked at that minute split, thinking that's not a good thing for Marcus Lee. It kind of feels like it's more of a positive thing for Rob Lowe because that's more minutes than I was expecting coming into the year.
Yeah, and look, Marcus Lee was good, and I will say it again. Marcus Lee is a better basketball player than Rob Lowe at this point in his career. But that defensive presence doesn't get you Supercoach points. It, might win you championships, but doesn't get you Supercoach points.
Yeah, exactly. But you think the matchups this week change things? Are we going to see more of Lee? So that first game Melbourne play against Southeast Melbourne, they've got the minutes where Jordan Hunter's there. He's more of a genuine old school big. He'll roll to the rim. Derek Walton's constantly looking for him. Do you go to that matchup and then hope, or do you go with Lowe and hope that Jordan Hunter can actually come out to the perimeter and guard Rob Lowe? Because when Big Geordie Hunter goes to the bench, they're very mobile after that. They move Matt Hurt to the 5, which I don't think Marcus Lee can cover. So I'm probably looking at Lowe here as the real beneficiary of the matchup on that one. Tassie, we saw what happened last week.
Yeah. And yeah, like Low looked good against Tassie. Could be all right against Southeast Melbourne as well. Look, he's 170K. Like, Rob Lowe's been in the league a long time.
Mm,
Skittles has it there, singing T-Pain, Get Low. Um, there's opportunity to get Low because he can score points
yeah,
and make you some cash. Heading
yeah.
into 4 games in 2 weeks, I think you are absolutely mad not to have Rob Lowe or Marcus Lee.
Uh, I think you're absolutely mad not to have Rob Lowe. I think you're a wanker if you bring in Marcus Lee in.
No, but if you have Marcus Lee, I think he's a hold. Still covered his break even. 19
Yeah.
points.
Look,
4 games in 2 weeks.
yeah, I'm not high on Marcus Lee at all. I think you're right. He covered his break even, but that seemed very laboured and strained to do it. And it was almost like a relief that he somehow, tripped over and the ball bounced off his knee for an assist to get him there in the end. Like, I think Lowe's the play in this one. Cheaper, he's going to go up in cash.
Yep. Look, we spoke about Jack White. We talk about how high we are on Shea Illy. We're staying away from Delhi due to that baby being due. Goulding and Ian Clark, I probably couldn't have less interest in.
No, never have they ever been good fantasy players.
Let's draw a line in the sand. Let's head to Sunday then. 2:30. I'm liking these 2:30 Sunday games. I reckon. The missus and the kids might have a little nap. I can sink a couple tins while watching this. I might even hit you up to come around and watch this one, mate. But Sydney
Perfect.
versus Illawarra should be a rip snorter.
Yeah, the Freeway series seems to always deliver. There's some feeling between these two teams, especially with Brian Gorgon. Now is Sydney, formerly of the Hawks, formerly of Sydney. He's gone back and forth on this one and caused quite the rivalry. But look, these two teams are up the top of the ladder. Uh, the little brother, Illawarra, is always just trying to get some respect. Um, Matchups across the board. I feel like Illawarra match up really well in the bigs. And I feel like Sydney's got a distinct advantage at guard.
Yeah, I think so too. And whereas I think somebody like Tyler Harvey could have an absolute field day against a subpar team like Brisbane at the moment, yeah, it could be a world of hurt against Sydney. So probably staying away from Tyler Harvey. And he was one I was really keeping an eye on and didn't do enough to, I suppose, pop on my radar and bring him in, but didn't do enough to not at least watch him again this week
Mm.
and hope he doesn't change in price too much for when Illawarra get onto a string of doubles later on in the
He's
year.
he's frustrating. I feel like he should be better than he is every single year, and you get lulled into that. Oh, he had one assist. I think it's the beginning of him becoming a point guard, and unless he scores 30 actual points, he's not going to give you anything super coach relevant. He's similar to like a Goulding in my book, and but there's just something about him that keeps piquing our interest and keeps leaving us disappointed.
Um, Tatum has to at least look at the fact that Jalen Adams ripped him to absolute shreds last week, right?
100%. Who is Illawarra's best defender in the guard department?
Davo Hickey.
Is this an uptick in minutes for him?
I hope so. He didn't look very good at anything last week, though.
That's true. Although, yeah, no, he wasn't even ready for that game.
He was bad. And I know he had a ripper NBL 1 year, but he just looked like deer in the headlights and wasn't quite ready for this. I feel like last year they threw him in and he was so amped to get those 2 minutes per game that he excelled. But
Yeah.
coming in expecting to play 20 minutes per night, yeah, he didn't look ready. Look, a week to settle down. Playing against the same team again, Davo Hickey should have a better week this week. Can't be
Yeah,
much worse.
I think so. And look, the silver lining is he covered his break even. If he does half of what we expect him to do, he'll be all right.
New Zealand against Southeast Melbourne. Again, I don't even want to talk about New Zealand
No.
players. Oh, we forgot to talk about Taco Fall signing for a little bit.
Yeah, that's big
It's
news.
Taco too. Yeah. What do you think?
Well, look, I kind of half get the idea that this may be a little bit of a trial. Is this Freddie Gillespie's going to have to meet his replacement on this US trip? Uh, look, I don't think Taco Fall is going to have a huge impact in the NBL. We know that bigs don't particularly do that well. It's more a league for mobile bigs, but it'd be a nice little publicity stunt and could not be any worse than Freddie Gillespie.
No, I think it'd be good. I mean, sure, you'd get a lot of boards off Parker Jackson Cartwright's missus. But I'm not talking about his wife. And look, it would be great. I would go watch a Taco Fall game. The guy is the third biggest NBA player in history.
Yeah, and he's probably about the third lightest as well. There's not much to that frame of his, but look, it would be a great lob target for Parker Jackson Cartwright. I feel like it'd be worth the price of admission just to go and see that.
True.
Mm.
But let's talk about the fantasy relevant players, I suppose.
Yeah,
To preface, Taco Fall is not playing in this game. He's
no,
signed on for the NBA, NBL games while they're in the States. But yeah, you're right. It does feel like a training trial. It does feel like come in, see if you can fit in with these guys. I haven't been that happy with Freddie Gillespie. We probably could have seen that coming. And
yeah, he might headbutt you.
yeah, but again for Southeast Melbourne, Keandre Cook scored very well against New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm expecting Derek Walton Jr. to have a field day in this one, whereas I don't think Melbourne's a great matchup.
What
If
do you feel
Delhi
like
plays,
Scobie's the one who plays that Keandre Cook role? Like Keandre's
yeah,
that
maybe,
two guard. James
yeah,
Bateman was the one guard, and he had a horrible outing.
yeah. But Bateman was on the bench when Keandre Cook went off. That was more what
Mm.
I was thinking. Like they were just chucking guys that were playing
Yeah,
basketball, basically.
yeah, that's it. Cool.
Nothing else you want to chat about with Southeast Melbourne?
No, look, New Zealand doesn't interest me there. I'm more just having a look long term. Southeast Melbourne in that game, I feel like the 4 spot's going to be weak for New Zealand. So Matt Hurt might be up for another big one. He's going to be too mobile when they play him at the 5 for Freddie Gillespie. So Matt Hurt is another really good trade in. Don't be for 1 week, really. But if you want to pivot off from Terrell Harrison, Matt Hurt's probably a good look. He's
Yeah,
got great matchups
true.
this week.
Yeah, he does. Actually, yeah, I might even look at that myself a little bit. But look, let's go into the most popular trades this week. It's something that we started towards the end of last year. We have been doing the top 5% to narrow down on those. And this week it's brought to us by Ryan from Astute Newstead. So if your interest rates are high on your current home loan, if you're looking to get into your next home loan or your first home loan, Ryan can help out. Get in contact with him. It's obligation free. It doesn't cost you a dime. He has access to over 50 different lenders, and he will find out who's got the specials, who's got the best interest rates at any current time. So have a chat to him, see about how he can save you some money from the major banks, play them all off against each other. Let him know that we sent you, and yeah, I suppose save some coin on us. I know he saved me $350 to $400 a month on my current home loan. And honestly, didn't cost me a dime. I just got in contact with him. He gets paid from the banks. Look, let him give you a free quote. Mate, I'm going to flick this into the top 10%. And the most traded in player, and we're going to go down into individual transactions, is Rob Lowe in, Bryce Cotton out. That is saving a metric F ton, isn't it?
Look, I can see why that's happening. We talked before about you really can't hold Bryce Cotton on a single this week when you've got so many other guard options and you're going to need the cash to bring them in. Rob Lowe, I love that trade. We talked about his matchups versus Southeast Melbourne. I feel like if we're ever not going to have a minute split right down the middle, this is the matchup that's going to give that extra boost of maybe even another 5 minutes to Rob Lowe. Love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the next one is Jalen Adams in for Rocco Zikarsky. So everybody's using a lot of jewels in this trade. This is 3.6% in the top 10%. And just remember, there's close to 20,000 super coaches that play this. So 3.6% isn't a lot. It's only 100 or so. But Jalen Adams to Rocco Zikarsky, if you can do this, like Jalen Adams does seem like a little bit of a slam dunk, doesn't he?
100%. Look, we like the matchups for him. The only thing we don't like is the travel they've got this week. I feel like the 54 he threw up in round one is probably a ceiling game, but he didn't double-double either. So there's no bonus points in there. He just 25 points, I think it was, 7 assists, 6 rebounds. Look, I think the assists were higher than normal from what we've seen in the past, but maybe that's a result of having some really good teammates this year. I think a lot of us have got last year's Jalen Adams in our head when they had that horrible season under the American coach. We need to turn the clock back to the MVP Jalen Adams season, because I think that's what we're going to see, if not better, given the amount of talent around him. Because that MVP year, he didn't have a lot around him, so the assists were a lot lower.
And he's got so much around him this year that if he decides to pass, they should be getting buckets. Like Cam Oliver, despite only scoring 31 points, and I know I said I would bring him up and I forgot. Cam Oliver, despite only scoring that many points, still looked really good in the minutes he was out there. Xavier Cooks looked better than I expected. I'm expecting big things from Jalen Adams. Just remember, bringing him in this week, you have to almost bank a trade to trade him out last week, because if you think Bryce Cotton's too much, and it's evident 5 of the top 10 trade outs are Bryce Cotton, it's going to be the other way for Jalen Adams next week. So you better hope everybody stays healthy.
Yeah. And look, Jalen Adams is probably coming in too, because there's a pretty decent projected price rise, which is going to close that gap between him and Cotton if you want to go that way next week. That squad around Jalen Adams, though, there's just so many finishes, right? Like Cooks is not going to stuff around the ball too much. He's going to catch one dribble, take it to the hoop. We've seen Cam Oliver catch and shoot. We've seen him just go up and dunk at home. Lepepe is just going to put a layup in if you set him up. Noy just shoots the ball every time he touches it. So like, we don't have those guys who Jalen Adams passes to that he's played with in the past. It's going to stuff around with the ball and cancel out his assists. So I think if Jalen Adams penetrates and kicks, that shot's going up on this squad. And Tui's another one who's really kicking goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And he is brought in this week as well. Well, let's talk about that. People going down to Alex Tui. We haven't spoke about him in this game. Probably the quietest 34 Supercoach points you'll ever see in your life.
Yeah, look, Tui is a legitimate player. Like, he is such a well-rounded game. I love to watch him, but he was just efficient. Yeah, I really didn't think he would have been anywhere near it. I wasn't even considering him until probably a day later. I was looking through the box score. I'm thinking, hold on, 34, I think it was, Supercoach points. He's that little bit more expensive at 190,000. I don't think I'll be playing him on my court. And so 190,000 on my bench is probably just that little bit much for me to make work with the way my squad's structured. But he's got a price rise incoming. And if you can get Tui in, he's a double this week, then a single, then a double. You could hold him through 3 weeks at that price, surely.
Yeah, I think you could. I like Tui as well. I just am so aware, like, I don't want to be bringing in too many Sydney players. Like I was high on Cam Oliver. He was a guy that I was always going to hold. You don't want to be having too many going into a single, which is probably why I didn't have a guard from Illawarra to start off with, because I know that there's some singles incoming shortly. So, I suppose it's a big choice between spending up and getting a Jalen Adams or staying down, hoping Tui does what he does, because Tui will make... If Tui does what he does again for a couple of weeks, he's going to make a metric F ton worth like a lot more money than Jalen Adams is.
Yeah, for sure. But you're right, though. We've got Sydney coming off the doubles for a week and Illawarra coming off at the same time. A lot of us are holding a Days, Hickey, Aldrich, Cam Oliver, now a Jalen Adams. There's 5 guys we have to jump off on the same week. You add a 6th in Tui in there, then you're having to start thinking, well, how many of these can I hold on my bench? And so
Yep.
it's more a case of how many is too many.
I'm going to skip a couple of these. A few of them are like Kendrick Davis for Jalen Adams. Get it? Single for doubles. You've got the money there. Kendrick Davis to Shea Illy. They got the same output, but one's on a double, one's not on a single. I don't feel like we need to delve too deep into this. There is a few I do want to delve into, and that's Jack White out for Jalen Adams. Whereas I like Jalen Adams coming in, I think Jack White played one of the worst NBL games I've seen him play.
Yeah.
Scored 19 Supercoach points, covered his break even, and he's heading into 4 games in 2 weeks. Jack White is not a trade out. I cannot express this more.
No, you must keep Jack White. He won't be worse than he was last week. The schedule is the best out of any other team. You will regret trading him out next week when there is all these gaps you have to fill, and the only 2 constants you would be able to hang on to is Illy and Jack White because they're on Melbourne. I couldn't comprehend trading him out right now.
No, me neither. And that's why I brought it up. And the other one is Lat Mayen being traded in. Whereas I don't think it's a bad trade, I don't think that it's really a this week trade with the Henschel rule, which I'll let you explain in a minute, and with him not going up in price. Like, you're bringing in a guy on a single. I'm looking at the top 10 players here, and Lat Mayen is the only guy that anybody's bringing in on a single. If you're not using a boost this week and you're not using that trade to get in one of those other 10 trades, I don't get it.
Well, from someone who does get it, let me explain it to you. So,
Please.
you know, my wife has a team that outscored mine, and now I'm tinkering with that one, pretending it's my team.
Yeah.
I've brought Lat Mayen in on that one, and it's because of what we just spoke about before with having to jump off Sydney and Illawarra at the same time. I have a luxury trade this week. I've covered what I need to do with one trade. I'm going to downgrade someone on my bench and bring in Lat Mayen. I fully understand the Henschel rule that he's 34 is going to drop out of the equation. But to have a guy who is borderline playable, I feel like he's got a decent role, but he's at least going to be a really solid bench option coming into a double-double. If I get in early, then next week, if I bring in Kendrick Davis, Montrezl Harrell, or maybe a boost for someone else, I'm pivoting away from having so many Illawarra and Sydney guys and moving to a squad with almost an like 4 trades essentially next week.
Yeah, true. I think if I was doing that, it would be to save a boost. But yeah, I know so many people have that boost penciled in for next week, but you can always change. I don't know. I just think Lat Mayen might score 10 on the week and you regret it.
Yeah, look, it's funny you mentioned a lot of people talking about the boost next week. So this came up on the chat in our Patreon today, and I went back to the interview we did with DVG last year's winner, and he boosted a lot early, and I feel like he can this year because you look at the schedule. The back end of the season is so loaded with certain teams on big runs. You've got New Zealand, you've got Brisbane. It's probably a good time to check the second half of the schedule, but I feel like you're going to make your money in the first half of the season, and hopefully that money can then be put into filling your squad with those couple of teams that have the big runs.
You could that about rounds it out. People are bringing in Darius Days in, and I think that we've explained many times that we think that's a great trade as well.
I see Global just jumping in the chat there saying that Big Lat Mayen did have a -10 in the blitz. But I'll give you the reversal of that one, Global. Terrell Harrison won the MVP of the Blitz. We see how that turned out last week. So I feel like he can turn it around.
No, I think that's wishful thinking. But let's have a bit of a chat about our community team, because if you look in our link tree below, you can get into our Discord. We've mentioned our Patreon. I don't want it to turn into something that we're plugging too much, which is why we've decided to keep our community team on our Discord. It is a community-led initiative, I suppose. We have every sport in there, and probably the chat that goes off the most during NBL season is this community team. Everybody pops in, everybody posts what they want to do with the team, and you like what other people say. So if people want to go Tyrell Harrison to Rob Lowe this week, and a flying toilet pops in and says that, everybody just smashes the like button or the downvote button, and whoever has the most likes get the trades. Because we max trading, we're not really worried about trading. We will probably, during weeks where we think that it's a good boost, put a poll up as to when you should boost and when you shouldn't. And look, it's probably the best discussions in the NBL community. And there's a reason this team finished top 150 last year, because sometimes the best trades are the most obvious ones.
Yeah, 100%. It's that consensus. You're not just getting in your own head. You've got 30, 40 other blokes who are validating the trades, and the result speaks for itself. Top 150 last year was phenomenal, and probably could have been better. We threw a few Hail Marys at the end trying to get up, and a few of them didn't pay off. So, yeah, get into it, guys, on the Discord.
Last week, they did decide to captain Tyrell Harrison, but don't feel bad
Sometimes
because
it doesn't work.
50% or 48% of the voters wanted to captain Tyrell Harrison. And maybe it was just something, you didn't have the balls to captain Tyrell Harrison with your main team, so you did it on this one. It's just one that you can make some options. Like, I know we've got Kendrick Davis and some blokes like that. We're going to be having some discussions about who you sit, who you start, whether you're bringing in a Derek Walton Jr. or one of these blokes, or you're holding Kendrick Davis. Look, I love the community team chat every week. Get in there. It's about to get cooking.
Without Cook, don't bring him in.
I mean, if people vote for it, yeah. If people vote for it, let's do it. Hey man, we're nearly at an hour. Let's have a chat about some captains.
Are you ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain!
Now, I want to bring up some either Crafty Fat Boys, Jalen Adams, Captain Baby, or a flying toilet. Jalen Adams is fool's gold this week. Remember the name. A flying toilet told you Jalen Adams is this week's fool's gold. Hammer, where do you sit on Jalen Adams?
I don't think he's fool's gold. I think 54 was a ceiling game. But why don't we put that here? I'm going to put up a little poll in the Discord later tonight. What is an acceptable captain score?
36 on a
think
single.
Jalen Adams covers 36.
So I think that's 72 this week. So I think it's going to be pretty. I think he's going to have a big one because we're just seeing him play against exactly the same team he scored 54 against.
Yeah. Look, I think he covers his break even. He goes up in cash, which is half the attraction here. He's going to go up in cash, and then you can use that pivot to a cotton or wherever you want to over the next couple of weeks. I don't think he's fool's gold. I think he's not going to score 54, but he's going to more than cover what a captain should.
Absolutely. Some of the other options. Hey, I'm bringing up these little guards again. Derek Walton Jr. I would not be surprised to see Derek Walton Jr. score more than Jalen Adams this week. It's basically exactly the same matchups. You've got an easy one and then one you expect to be a bit harder. You know what? I'd argue that Derek Walton Jr. have better matchups this week than Jalen Adams does.
Yeah. So if you're going to rank your top 3 captains this week, how are you going?
I am going Jalen Adams.
Yep.
Derek Walton Jr. and Darius Days.
Yeah, that's what I've got. Honorable mention to Delhi if he plays. A little bit of a cheaper price point. Honorable mention to Cooks. I think outside of those five, I can't really think of too many I'd want to put the C next to.
Nobody from Melbourne playing a double, or are you just burnt from Jack White last week?
Look, 100% not getting rid of Jack White, but I'm not going to captain him again. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if he popped off for a good score. I'm just not gonna bank on it. I think there's more upside with some of the others. Um, Look, Darius Days is coming in at third. We know he's big. He's had one game under his belt, but he does come up against Xavier Cooks, who's a pretty tough defender, and he's got a lot of length about him, and does have the mobility to carry a hand out on the perimeter. He's playing Brisbane, who were awful, but the power forward spot wasn't a real giving one in that Brisbane Breakers game last week. Derek Walton Jr., you've talked about. It's only the Melbourne matchup that scares me if Delhi and Illy are there. So I think Jalen Adams is my number one. Adams, Derek Walton Jr., Darius Days.
I'm with you there. I currently don't have Jalen Adams, which is a little bit scary of him as my captain option. But yeah, we're gonna probably delve into we're 100%. If you're a member of our Patreon, you're gonna know exactly where our team starts, where it finishes, and what trades we're doing this week. Let's head into question time.
It's question time. Let's answer your questions for the week ahead.
Mate, what Skittles is asking, what do you think about the hybrid Camry? He's definitely thinking about it.
Well, sometimes it's not what you spend, it's what you save, isn't it, Matrix?
Yeah, and every time you go to the Bowsers, you could save some money with a hybrid Camry. You know what? Story time. Had a hybrid Camry once upon a time. Did a trip down to Yamba. Used 2.7 liters per 100 kilometers. And sometimes it is not what you spend; it's what you save. The hybrid Camry is not as good if you're just driving around town all the time. Maybe a plug-in hybrid or something like that. You could save a little bit more money, but I tell you what, out on the highway, 2.7 liters per 100 Ks, not even having to worry about plug it in when you get home. I tell you what, that gets me, Randy.
I can see something's knocking on that desk.
Legend 24, and he is a legend. He's got one for you because I feel like the car question was a little bit more for me. Do I keep Glover for the price rise and then trade him to Henschel? Or do I trade Glover to Henschel this week so that he doesn't miss out on a potential Latmayan or Nick Marshall?
Yeah, look, I think one in the hand's worth two in the bush. If you're confident you're going to get a Glover price rise and it's big enough, go that way. Keep Glover, bring in Henschel next week. You're downgrading then. You're going to have some extra cash just to splash around. Remembering there is a boost there if you want it. You got 4 to use for the year. Look, the Latmayan, Nick Marshall, I'm not seeing Marshall as really must own or must bring in at this stage. He was okay. He didn't really impress me. I feel like Latmayan is more of a 4, whereas Nick Marshall's more of a 3. It's the 4 spot which I think is going to be crucial to Adelaide because neither Trez or Humphreys can do anything outside the keyway. Having Latmayan there, man, that is a little bit fruity doing that button up. But I think Latmayan is going to get the go just for his ability to play the 4 and stretch it.
Yeah, and I'm not saying bringing in Latmayan is a bad trade. I think Latmayan is a genuine option this next week. And yeah, you're gonna have to boost if you want. Like everybody was talking in preseason about how you want 3 Melbourne guys coming into week 2 because they're going into a double-double. Now, me not being too excited about Cairns on the same matchup, if I had to pick the 3 Adelaide players, it's Kendrick Davis, Latmayan, and Montrez Harrell. So yeah, I do think, but you do always have a boost to get you out of trouble is probably the preface there.
Yeah. Just as long as you understand the Henschel rule and that Latmayan's 34 is going to drop out, you're going to get another week to look at him before you have to really make that decision.
Yeah.
Go the Glover. Keep Glover, then Henschel next week.
Yeah, I do think so. IJ asked me if I went for a run before I jumped on. No, I just argued with a 2-year-old, which is way harder than a run, can I tell you? Yeah. Cooks to days, mate.
Well, this week, if you're already holding Cooks, he's on a double this week. Days is on a double this week. I'm assuming you're doing it to free up cash to bring someone else somewhere. I feel like Cooks and Days will probably have a similar score. So I don't hate going to Days if it's to free up cash.
Yeah, and it depends what you're doing with that extra.
Yeah.
Is it 100K, 90K? Like, if that's the difference between getting Rocco Zakarsky to Rob Lowe, I like it. But if
Yeah.
you're just sitting there with 80K in the bank after you trade Cooks to Days, then for me, it's not worth it, even though I think Days is going to go up in price.
Yeah. If you're keeping Cooks, though, he does have a double another week later. I think Days is going to be one you might be able to, depending on your squad structure, hold on your bench for a few weeks and get a couple more price rises out of him. He's going to keep going up, and if you can manage to hold him, I don't know. I haven't got the schedule in front of me, but Illawarra's schedule's got to get good again at some point, doesn't it?
I mean, yeah, every schedule's got
Eventually.
to get good get it again at some point. That's fantastic. I'm glad I did this. It doesn't get good in the first half of the year, to be
No.
completely honest.
So you'd be holding him for a long time, but hopefully you get the price rise and you can bring him back at the end of the year.
Yeah, I'm thinking Days is somebody that I get one price rise, and he's somebody that I'll look towards
Potentially.
booting after that.
Yep.
Again, while we're on Cook's chat, Luke Rogers is asking who is better to keep, Cooks or Oliver, if I have to trade one out to get Days in. Don't know.
Ooh. What do you reckon?
I think Cam Oliver looked like he could have very easily have scored the 43 that Darius Days did last week.
Mm.
Don't think Sydney expected Adelaide to put up as big of a fight as they did. Cam
Yep.
Oliver looked a little bit rusty to start. If I had to trade any one of them out, it would still be Cam Oliver because you're not going to get that price rise. And I think Xavier Cooks will still outscore it. But again, if you go on Xavier Cooks down to Darius Days, and that's the difference between, I'm just going to throw it out there, Rocco to Rob Lowe or somebody like that. If it's the difference between getting a guy up to an Alex Tui or somebody like that, I really like that trade as well. It depends what you're doing with the other trade, but I still think probably going Cam.
I think the other part to that too is what's the makeup of your squad? Is keeping Oliver an advantage because he's forward centre eligible and you can move him through that, whereas Cooks is only forward. Um, I don't own Cooks. I'm probably planning to get Oliver out in the next couple of weeks. But look, Oliver was insane in the blitz. His points per minute was phenomenal. He's coming off the blitz. Gorgian did mention in one of the post game things that he's still not quite in shape and he'll work into it. But I feel like the minutes will only increase for Cam Oliver. I actually quite like that role on the bench where he's a focal point in that second unit. And look, the way he played, there's a few rebounds that just didn't bounce his way. There are a few wide open threes that he didn't knock down. So I think it's probably a flaw, that 31. It's not his ceiling.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think, yeah, very, very easily could have been that 43.
Yeah.
M-Flight, who's more important to bring in, Lowe or Adams? And I suppose this is a question that's going to come down to cash gen or points in round 2.
I think it comes down to who you've got as your captain or as a lead guard option. If you've got a Derek Walton Jr., I'd say you need to prioritise Lowe. I don't think the gap between Derek Walton Jr. and Adams is that big that you really must pivot to one or the other. If you've got two playable guards on doubles, whether that's Ilian Delhi or something like that, and you can then captain someone like a Darius Days or someone Xavier Cook, someone like that, I'd prioritise Lowe. But you need to make sure you've got two playable guards and a captain option.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to depend how the rest of your team comes out. David Bryson is he's got Delhi, Wisekamp, and Harvey.
Mhm.
Illy's the other guard. Delhi seems to pick of the bunch, but he's a bit hesitant given going Delhi and Illy.
Yeah.
What would you do here? Who's your start sit for Davo here?
I'm gonna throw this out. I would have Delhi as my starter, knowing they play the very first game of the round, and you will know just before tip off if he's playing or not. You at least guarantee yourself one game out of him. At least then, if you've got Delhi in your squad, it's very easy to quickly trade down to Wisekamp or Harvey if they come out in the broadcast and they say, "Look, his kid's been born, he's not playing. He'll be back for game 2, whatever it is." The worst case scenario, you'll probably get one game out of him. But that's the order you put in: Delhi, Wisekamp, Harvey. That's the way I'd be rating them.
Mate, look, we are running out of time. Appreciate Crafty Fat Boy saying that there's 40 in the live chat, and that's on YouTube. Plenty more watching over on Facebook and X as well. We've got about 110 watching as we speak. Pop across to YouTube, give us a like and subscribe on YouTube, like and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast, whatever. Yeah, help us out. It really like, not only do we appreciate it, but it does help us out. Mate, we're nearly out. I've got 2 questions left. Hayden Brown is asking, would you sell Ian Clark to Delhi? And how well do you know Delhi's wife?
Does anyone follow her on Twitter? Can we get the inside word on when this kid's due?
I know. We're putting out a PSA. Slide into our DMs. You will get a standard squeeze pack if you are a nurse at a hospital and you let us know the correct information as to when Mrs. Delavadova comes in and is delivering that baby, so that we can set our Supercoach teams. So.
This is like when you come out with 6 degrees of separation, or name the most obscure celebrity you've come across. And look, for me, it was Benita from Play School. She came into where I was working once and asked to use the toilet. But
Benita.
yeah, there's a fun fact for you. Yeah, look, if anyone gets any inside running on that, hit us up. I don't like Ian Clark as a fantasy player, though.
Mate, let us know your pod for this week. So somebody low owned, somebody maybe a little bit obscure. What have you got for us this week, mate?
Yeah, I'm going with Matt Hurt. He was pretty low owned. I think Supercoach official page put out something like 2.6%. He was the pod last week. But I think, again, we talked earlier, his matchups are so favourable. His ability to play the 5 and shoot the piss out of it from long range and draw some of these bigs out is going to change the way the other teams have to play the game. So he's going to be my pod again.
I don't want to double down on shit situations, but I actually think Tyrell Harrison will score well this week. He's playing against Illawarra. He's playing against Sam Froling. Not going to stretch the floor like the bigs in New Zealand. Whereas I still consider him a trade out, because the reason I had him was for cash generation at that 230K, but I would not be surprised to see him roll out and score 40 this week.
Yeah, look, I'm not that high on him. I think maybe high 20s is probably more realistic. Sam Froling's no mug, but yeah, look, definitely a possibility.
Mate, 2 more. Lowen Davis to Adams and Lepepe. I wouldn't be trading Low out.
No. I think, once again, if you've got a Derek Walton Jr., you probably don't need to go to Adams. I feel like they're both going to be on par this week. Look, Lepepe, we touched on before. I was high in the first quarter. He had 10 Supercoach points. I thought this guy's going to be good. He finished with 10 Supercoach points. Great player for the team. I don't think it's going to readily translate.
Yeah, and he's somebody that I'm looking to get out basically as soon as I can. Not to Nuff. Just hopefully there's like a Jackson McCoy and some other blokes like that come in that can score a little bit better. We get a small price rise, because it doesn't take much at 69K to go up.
And I own both Henschel and Lepepe. Well, my wife does. And if I could move Henschel with his dual position to that forward spot, get rid of Lepepe, bring in a Jackson McCoy if I had the luxury trades to do it, I feel like that's a better use of the money.
Mate, last one. Post some more NBL videos. I love them. Well, follow us on TikTok because we post our highlights basically from all the episodes. I've been doing reviews the day after a game every time, just in case you missed the game. There's not that much substance. It's only a minute or so, but it's just letting you know the Supercoach points, what were good matchups, and maybe those captain relevant guys. Maybe giving some just letting people know that I'm thinking of them after they captained Tyrell Harrison the night before. But look, follow us on Twitter. We're posting them on YouTube as well. We've got them on Instagram. We've got them on Facebook. Look, get us on all the socials. And, mate, I think that's a wrap for this week.
I think that's it. Good luck to everyone this weekend. Make sure you get over to the Discord and have your say on the community team. And we will see you guys Monday night for the review show.
Mate, you've listened to an Insight Fantasy Sports podcast. Good luck this week. Cheerio.